Daniel Cole stood outside the rusted shutter of an old garage on the edge of downtown, holding a folded newspaper ad that read, "Property for sale, cheap, as is, no questions." He was 26, broke, and 3 months behind on rent. He had exactly $1,200 left in his bank account, and he was about to spend most of it on a building that smelled like motor oil and regret. The garage belonged to Richard Vance, the CEO of Vance Autotech, a mid-sized auto parts company that had recently moved its operations to a shining new facility across town. The old garage, a squat, ugly building with a caved-in roof corner and a busted electrical panel, was, in Vance's words, "worthless junk taking up space on my books." Vance sat in his glass office that morning, barely glancing up when his assistant told him a young man wanted to buy the old Fifth Street garage. He laughed. "Tell him $1,000 and it's his. I want it off the tax rolls before the quarter closes." Daniel didn't know any of that. He only knew he'd walked past the building for years on his way to the community college where he took night classes in mechanical engineering, and something about its bones, the deep concrete floor, the tall bay doors, the hidden loft space above the office, had always struck him as more valuable than its peeling paint suggested. Every time he passed it, he slowed down without meaning to, imagining lifts installed where the old workbenches sat, imagining light pouring through the grimy skylight if someone ever bothered to clean it. He'd asked around the neighborhood about the building before making a single call. An old shopkeeper 2 doors down told him the garage used to be a thriving repair shop decades ago, before Vance Autotech swallowed it up in an expansion and let it rot as unused overflow storage. That story stuck with Daniel. A building doesn't become worthless on its own. It becomes worthless when the people who own it stop paying attention. He signed the papers in 15 minutes. Vance's lawyer barely looked at him. The check cleared. Just like that, Daniel Cole owned a garage that everyone else considered trash. The first week was brutal. The roof leaked when it rained. Rats had nested in the office walls. The wiring was so old that Daniel didn't dare plug in more than one tool at a time. He worked nights after his shift at the auto parts counter, patching the roof himself with tarps and scavenged shingles, sleeping on a cot in the corner because he couldn't afford both rent and repairs. Some nights he questioned everything. He'd sit on the cot, listening to rain drip through the tarp into a bucket, and wonder if he'd just burned his last savings on a building that would swallow him whole. He called his older sister once, half joking, half desperate, asking if it was too late to back out of a signed deal. She told him what their father used to say, "Nobody remembers the people who avoided risk, they remember the ones who fixed the roof." He started small, oil changes, brake pads, tire rotations, advertised on a hand-painted sign, and a free social media page. His prices were fair, his work was honest, and he texted customers photos of what he'd found under the hood instead of hiding behind jargon. Word spread fast in a neighborhood starving for someone trustworthy. By the second month, Daniel had saved enough to fix the electrical panel properly. He hired his first employee, a laid-off technician named Marcus, who'd been turned away from 3 shops for being overqualified and underpaid. Marcus brought decades of experience and a network of loyal customers who followed him to the little garage on 5th Street. On his first day, Marcus walked the length of the shop, ran a hand along the old concrete, and told Daniel something he never forgot. "Most people look at a building and see what it costs to fix. You looked at it and saw what it could earn. That's the whole difference between an owner and a renter." By the 3rd month, Daniel noticed something else. Half his customers were asking about the same problem. Nowhere nearby to buy quality replacement parts without paying dealership markup or waiting days for online shipping. Daniel remembered his old job at the parts counter. He knew suppliers. He knew margins. He cleared out a corner of the garage, built shelving from salvaged wood, and opened a small parts counter of his own. It worked. Mechanics from other shops started stopping by, too, not just customers, but competitors, because Daniel's prices beat the regional distributor by a wide margin. He was moving volume nobody expected from a junk garage. He kept the pricing simple and posted it on a whiteboard by the door. No haggling, no hidden fees. A small thing, but in an industry known for confusing customers, it built trust faster than any advertisement could have. By the fourth month, the loft space above the office, the one Vance's company had used for dead file storage, became a workshop for custom modifications. A local delivery company needed 5 vans retrofitted with better suspension for rough routes. Daniel and Marcus took the job, finished it under budget, and the delivery company signed a standing service contract. The dispatcher who'd hired them, a skeptical woman named Elena, admitted afterward that she'd only called because every other shop quoted 3 weeks and Daniel had promised 5 days. He delivered in 4. Then another local business heard about it. Then another. Money started moving faster than Daniel could track it by hand. He hired a part-time bookkeeper, a bright accounting student from his old community college, and structured the business properly for the first time. Separate accounts for repairs, parts, and the growing fabrication side. What had been one man patching a roof with tarps was now 3 revenue streams under one battered roof. By the 5th month, Daniel signed a lease on the empty lot next door, intending to expand parking and add a second bay. That was when Richard Vance heard the name. 5th Street Garage. Again, this time from his own head of logistics, who mentioned, almost in passing, that Vance Autotech's regional distributor had lost several small accounts to some independent shop that's been undercutting everyone on parts pricing. Vance was irritated, then curious, then stunned when he drove past the old building himself. The rusted shutter was gone, replaced with a clean glass storefront. Cars lined up outside. A hand-lettered sign that once read, 5th Street Auto, had been replaced with a professional one, Cole Motor Works, repair, parts, fabrication. He parked, walked in, and didn't recognize the place until he saw Daniel's face behind the counter. It took him a moment to place the young man who'd signed papers for $1,000 6 months earlier without a single question. "You're the kid who bought my garage," Vance said. "I am," Daniel replied, not looking up from the invoice he was finishing. "Junk garage, if I remember your ad correctly." Vance looked around, at the organized shelving, the 2 mechanics working under lifted cars, the small line of customers waiting at the counter, the framed permit for the fabrication contract with the delivery company hanging on the wall. He did quick math in his head, and didn't like the number he landed on. Daniel finally looked up. "Enough that I'm buying the lot next door. Enough that I turned down a franchise offer last week. Enough that I don't think about the $1,000 anymore, except as a good story." Vance didn't say much after that. He bought a set of wiper blades he didn't need, just to have a reason to keep standing there, and left without his usual confidence. On the drive back to his gleaming corporate office, he kept picturing the building he'd been so eager to unload, the one he called worthless without ever really looking at it. 6 months. That's all it had taken. A concrete floor, tall bay doors, a hidden loft, and one determined young man who saw an empire where a CEO had only seen a tax write-off. Daniel never gloated about it publicly, but he kept the original bill of sale, the one that read, "Sale price, $1,000, as is, no warranty," framed and hung by the front door of Cole Motor Works, right where every customer, and eventually Vance himself, would have to walk past it on their way in. It wasn't revenge. It was a reminder. Sometimes the thing people are most eager to throw away is exactly the thing worth building an empire on. You just have to be willing to patch the roof yourself, one tarp at a time, until the rest of the world catches up to what you already saw. Years later, when people asked Daniel how it all started, he never talked about strategy or spreadsheets. He talked about the sound of rain hitting a plastic tarp at 2 in the morning, and the choice to get up and fix it instead of giving up. Vance Autotech eventually closed 2 of its smaller branches, unable to compete with the trust Daniel had built one honest invoice at a time. Cole Motor Works, meanwhile, opened a second location across town, in another building somebody else had called junk, and the framed $1,000 receipt found a new home on that wall too, still the first thing every visitor noticed, right below a note that said, "Always keep fixing the roof."